Malice Doll is an anime shorter than your average movie. If you're interested in mysterious, esoterically charged anime such as Angel's Egg, Ghost in the Shell, Serial Experiments Lain, and Texhnolyze, I highly recommend you watch it before this video, unless the somewhat disturbing themes don't appeal to you. In this video, I'll explain it in a comprehensive and definitive way, and reveal all that was concealed in layers of intentional and profound symbolism, subtext, and so on. It is, by a large margin, one of the darkest, most disturbing, and melancholic anime I have ever seen, and it is as cryptic as all those other things combined. Before proceeding with the analysis, I'll briefly explain two things. Yes, there are many Japanese authors who can, and do work with a mixture of Eastern and Western symbolism, mythos, literary canon, and religious and philosophical themes. Ignorant people seem to think Japanese authors have never and cannot go beyond Buddhism and Shinto. And finally, this video is a slightly censored adaptation of an article I wrote for my Patreon, which is a Substack-like blog in which I write profound analysis of movies, books, manga and anime, and games which I haven't yet covered on this channel. Members of the channel and Patreon subscribers also get access to an exclusive Discord server in which you can talk to me directly and discuss with myself and others in real time various topics. If you're interested in supporting my work and getting access to over 30 articles as of today, feel free to subscribe to it. Shameless plug aside, I'll begin talking about the subject at hand. Malice Doll is incredibly mysterious. Its world reminded me of Blame's, a post-dystopian, futuristic ruined world where humanity went extinct and all that's left is artificial life. However, the science fiction aesthetic is somewhat of a red herring. The scenery is abstract and surreal in design and seems to be a blend of Moulin Rouge in Japanese geisha districts with a hint of cubism or vanguardist art more generally. A melting pot of elite-adjacent, pre-modern, and early-modern degenerate culture. In reality, Malice Doll's concealed narrative is, in part, a mirror of Alice in Wonderland. Has its title, which features a double meaning in the name of the protagonist, Malice, foreshadows. The anime's main character is Malice Doll, an adult entertainment robot that used to operate at a pleasure center. There are scenes which show us briefly how her job was like. Her clients, the humans, which the robots refer to as gods, were sadistic and indeed treated her like an object. However, one day, while searching for a repairer, for she was broken and a repair was due, she is lured by a mysterious blonde girl, who holds a giant, round egg in her hands, and looks out of place in the post-human slums, into an isolated chamber where a massive, strange thing stands. The floor is Masonic in design, with black and white squares interpolated, which represents duality, good and evil, light and darkness. The thing is designed as a rebus. Its exterior appears to be a combination of a black sun and a crescent moon, and it functions as an egg or a womb to the creature it holds within, a monstrous, draconic demon. And later, we learn there's a rabbit and a rooster inside it, representing the female and the male, also the sun and the moon. Above it is a recreation of the solar system, though the planet Saturn is disproportionately enormous. Saturn is Kronos, the deity of time who devoured his own children, to avoid the end of his age, a symbol cherished by elites who engage in similar antics. Malice is violated by the monster's tentacles and faints. Upon waking up, not at the Masonic temple, but at her room, she's not a robot anymore, she's a human. Malice becomes severely alienated from her own self because of that abrupt change, and she develops an obsession. She wishes to impart her essence into other robots by kissing their lips. Upon kissing them, they become human, or rather, they are imbued with life, with souls, wherein she uses the creation of a false paradise on Earth. Being gifted life corrupted the lifeless inhabitants of the ruined world, and they degenerated into demons who seek, desperately, corporeal pleasure, though they can never get satisfied, as is the nature of imperfect flesh. Robots are not supposed to have emotions or feelings, similarly to angels and early men, according to certain interpretations of such concepts. A memorable example of one such depiction is found in Mark Twain's Mysterious Stranger. This development is a twisted reenactment of Eve being convinced by the serpent to eat the fruit. The serpent being, of course, the monster within the egg that violated Malice, and Malice being Eve. Malice's very name alludes to her fall from grace, which mirrors Eve's, to her perversion and allure. The treacherous gift of life is spread around by the infected as well, and soon, there are no pure robots left. As the robots became living beings, they were then vulnerable to introspection, desire, suffering, illness, and death as well. What was once perceived to have been the unquestioned natural world for the pleasure-giving robots was now totally incompatible with their humanized selves. As such, their mere existence became chaotic, disruptive, and tragic, for they now had access to higher forms of knowledge and self-perception which they didn't have as golems, as mere automatons. The doll among them who liked Malice the most, Heather, dies in pain due to Malice's gift. She was an embodiment of purity, beauty, and goodness, despite her circumstances, and her name reflects it, as well as her wholesome relationship with Malice, meaning evergreen flower, and symbolizing admiration, beauty, perennial innocence, and good luck. Her horrible end was thus the most tragic sequence available. Her whole being was entirely subverted. Malice's grueling internal conflict reached the climax, and she began to wish to mend her sin. She asks Joe Admin's help to find the being responsible for transforming her. Joe then asks for Malice's kiss. He's the archetypal Adam, but she refuses, in fear of tainting him with her corrupt essence, as she's done to the others. Malice sees the little girl again, and somehow runs through a wall to follow her into her lair. The whole world is but an illusion, and she can now bend it accordingly, while others are still contained by its physicality. She opens the egg's shell and finds a copy of herself sleeping within it, and she realizes it's all a dream, which she herself created. She is the core of her own dream world. She dreamt of herself in a rigid body that requires oiling, and with a vacant heart that feels nothing. She is disturbed by this revelation and begins to turn into a flashy mixture of angel and demon in response. In the end, she wants to see another dream. A nice dream while she sleeps in the egg. The world is restored to its dark Edenic state of yore, and Malice sings happily and flies away like an angel. So, what does the ending truly mean? Who is Malice? Why is her name Malice? Why did she seek to create a dream world? Why did she imagine herself as a pleasure robot? Why did she create a scenario of corruption? And, well, Malice threw in her dream realm. The real Malice is, in reality, the blonde little girl, whose name is Alice. She mirrors the Alice from the books, who, in turn, was based upon a little girl Lewis Carroll was grooming and taking naked photographs of for nefarious reasons. He was a man integrated into elite circles and highly informed of the esoteric, and Alice in Wonderland is rich with occult symbolism and subtext. Malice was trafficked and abused as a child by elite men, and created a dream world within her mind to dissociate from the harsh reality. In this simulacrum, she was but a heartless robot, who could endure all forms of abuse unflinchingly. She was not a human, and as such, had no need for emotions. She imagined fellow trafficked girls as robots, as well as her handler, who became the character Joe Admin, and the rest of the staff, charged with cleaning and maintaining the place she was trafficked into. Furthermore, the operation had an international nature, as seen in the character designs, an aspect of the anime made even more disturbing given the recent scandals involving Japanese men, featured in the recently declassified files of a certain nefarious disciple of Solomon. Malice's name in the dream was such because, as is common with victims of this sort of trauma, she saw herself as filthy, impure, malicious. Alice saw herself as corrupted, and thus renamed herself Malice. But even her escapist fantasy was overrun by corruption, and her inhuman, robotic persona desired freedom and warmth. And, inexplicably, for robots are not supposed to feel emotions, cried melancholic tears with one of its eyes, for as is above, so is below. Malice followed her real self, Alice, the blonde little girl, like the Alice from the novels follows the white rabbit, for she could never remove herself from who she was beneath her imagination. It may be that the reason for Malice's dream worlds to have been abandoned, the humans who represented her evildoers, has disappeared from it, is that she was either discarded by the elites, or that she'd managed to escape them, thus explaining the sequence in which one of the robots, who may have been a rogue member of staff, attacks her, and at first Melissa Piper, and later Joe Admin, help her escape from him. But the trauma still haunts her, and as such, she is constantly dissociated from reality. The ending, then, could be interpreted as bittersweet, for she was able to, at the very least, partially emancipate herself from her sad and restrictive condition within the dream realm. She became as free as an angel in her own head. It's possible Alice was not a girl, but a grown-up woman in the present day of the real world, similarly to her doll form, She is lured by the image of herself as a child, because she yearns for her lost innocence. Sadly a common phenomenon those who endure childhood trauma experience. The little girl version of herself holds an egg, which is a symbol of rebirth. It's also possible that Alice was abducted, and sold when she was a young woman, and not a child, too. Or even that she voluntarily joined her disgraced enterprise, but was then trafficked or held hostage by her pimp. The visage of the little girl would not be contradictory, still. It's a subconscious manifestation of her yearning for her lost innocence, nonetheless.